All right, and let's go back to Genesis 8, if you will, and we'll get looking here. Genesis 8, we left last hour talking about the cycles here in verse 22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And again, my point here is that it's on a circle. It's a cycle. We're going to move from one event to the next event, to the next event, to the next event. Now, when you begin to deal with peoples, you, in the sociology, somebody one time told me I ought to go get a sociology degree. Then I read the course outlines and I go, no, I don't want to do that because it's a bunch of garbage. But and if you have a sociology degree, it's okay. I'm good with you and I love to talk to you and everything. But when I read the course outlines, I just went, oh my goodness. That's like the journalism at ASU, the school, Concrete School. I'm reading some of that going, holy cow, no wonder we got what we have. You know, it's like, man, you know, Cronkite was a good guy to a point, but he wouldn't agree with some of what and I'm just reading the course outlines, okay? Anyway, when you talk about peoples, there basically are three ways to think. And I just come over to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And while you're turning, there's three ways to think. There is the dot way. Okay? You know what the dot way is? The dots? All right? That is called chaos. A dot thinker is only thinking about what's going on right now. No accountability. Everything's up for grabs. Okay? Well, I put the dots in a line, but dots can be all over. Then you have the linear thinking. That's why I put the dots in a line, okay? A linear thinker is going somewhere. There's a beginning and an end. We're moving. We're going from here to here. A dot guy, a dot thinker, no accountability. A linear thinking, accountability. We go here, then we go here, then we go here, then we go here, then we go here. Then you have the circle thinker. And life is in a line, but guess what begins to happen to that line? It begins to bend. And it's not straight because you're going to hit an obstacle. And that thinking's got to bend then in the obstacle, okay? And a circle begins to be formed. If you look at Ecclesiastes 1, by the way, the circle ends up bringing you right back to where you began, doesn't it? That's a lousy circle, but you get the idea, okay? Ecclesiastes 1, look at verse number 9. The thing that hath been, it is, that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things. Neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Ecclesiastes 1, 9, 10, and 11. Okay? You know what Solomon's talking about? He's talking about a circle. That's what he's talking about. And what do you do when you're in a circle? You usually retrace the circle, don't you? So, by the way, Ecclesiastes, you ought to spend some time reading it. It'll give you the understanding of man's thinking. Guess what? There's nothing new under the sun. What was over here is just going to come right back around. You've heard the saying, if you're not a student of history, you're doomed to repeat history. And that's the thing. See, you have to have the dot thinking in the moment. You need to have the line thinking to get it done, the linear thinking to get it done. But you also have to have the circle thinking, because guess what? It's going to come back around. If you look over in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, Ecclesiastes 3, if you want to understand all the philosophies of the world, just read the book of Ecclesiastes, because every one of them stole Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, all that, stole it right out of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's right there. Ecclesiastes, Solomon wrote it. He's the wisest man to ever walk the earth outside of the Lord. And so he had it nailed down. Look at verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, and on you go. By the way, notice verse 2. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what you're planting. He's on that cycle again. Life is designed to be lived in a circular pattern. Come over to Psalms 90. The cycle is divided into seasons. And it's the seasons that bend the line and make out where you're at on the circle. Okay? What did I tell you? Psalms 90. So when we begin to look at the generations, and we begin to look at, the bending here, we're actually using all three methods of thinking, because we all think that way. So sometimes we think in such a chaotic manner in the moment. No, we're just boom, and then it's like, okay, well, I got to get this done. So now we're over here going blah, 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 and then it's like, well, wait a minute, that event happened, and now we got to spin it. Okay? Psalms 90. It's critical to understand that the people, where they're at on that circle, where they are, because we have this cycle that then makes up our life. The circle of life, as the song calls it in the Disney film. I just lost it. Lion King, thank you. Look at Psalms 90, and look, if you will, at verse 10. The days of years are 80 and 10. That's what? 80. And okay, I didn't finish reading. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years. There's your 80. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay? Yet is their strength, labor, and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and will fly away. We fly away. You fly away. So guess what you have? You have the cycles, don't you? You have what is called youth or childhood. Then you have, well, you know what? Let's not do it in there. That'll make for an ugly picture. You have youth or childhood, okay? Then you have that runs from 0 to 20. Then you have young adulthood. So young adulthood, that's going to run 21 to 41. Then you have midlife. That's going to put you 42 to 62. Then you have elderhood, which is going to move you 63 to 83. Okay? Then, but now, hang on now, because of modern medicine, you have late elderhood, which is going to move you from 83 out to question mark. Okay? So here it's going to move you 83 out here. Now, you'll notice that everything's done on a 20-year basis, okay? And there's a reason for that. But the cycles here, the youth, what are you doing in your youth? You're learning. You're growing, aren't you? You're acquiring values that are coming your way from your parents and from your social circles, your aunts, your uncles, your grandmas, your grandpas. If you're a grandparent, you have such great influence with grandchildren because they're going to sit on grandpa and grandma's lap and listen to them, and you can influence that. Young adults, you're testing those values that you've learned. You're beginning to go in and see if really what grandma and grandpa or mom and dad was really true. You know, they're 21 and they know everything. You know, you run into them and go, really, kid, you have not lived. But yet they'll sit around and go, I'm bored. They're not bored. What do you got bored of? You know, okay? Then in your midlife crisis, in that midlife, you come and you take and apply the values that you live. And in the 42 to 62, that is when you are at your most powerful. That when you think about presidents, think about congressmen. When are they at their most vitality? Not at 80. Okay? But back over here in their what? 50s, late 50s, 60s. What are they doing? They're coming into their power stroke, if you will. Then you move into eldership. And you begin to remember things. And you begin to transfer your values to the younger, to the youth. See? You are actually the elder. You're the leader. You know what it is to make your money, to have it, to have the power, and now you're leading. If you look at our current president, Trump, how old is he? He's 70. He's in his power, he's in his leadership stroke. Why do you think his company struggled so much when he was younger? He didn't have the experience, the understanding. He had to have teams of elders come along, people older than him, work him through the... Now what is he able to do? He rolls in and boom, okay? Whether you like the guy or not, think about the person and what's going on. Think about in your life, people who are your elders. What are they able to do? You look at them and there begins to be a little reverence for them and a respect for them. Why? Because they've been there, done that, got the t-shirts, the scars, they got everything, and they can help you through it. Then you have late elderhood, and this is the new one. And this one is on because of the advancement of medicine and the movement. And really what this one is doing is where elderhood, the social role is leader. Now the social role on the late elderhood is dependence. Because now you're dependent upon the institutions to now take care of you. Okay? In your youth, your social role is to grow, learn, get movement. Young adult is vitality. You're out serving, you're out testing, you're out moving. Midlife, it's power. You're managing institution. You're applying the values. In eldership, you're leaders. You're leading the institution. You're transferring those values over. But in late elderhood, you know what you're now dependent upon? Those very institutions to come and take care of you. So now you sit underneath the blanket on the rocking chair in the outer room, and you remember the good old days. See, the cycles here are you can't miss them. Now, when you come up on the board, what would springtime be? The youth. Then you're going to move into the young adults, your vitality, boom. Then you move into the harvest where now you're going to have that midlife and you're going to have all that power come your way. And then the wintertime, what are you doing? What happens in the cold? You die. You're in your eldership. So the cycles here. Now, in ministry, just as it is in life, where are you? This local assembly, Southwest Bible Fellowship, we're on a cycle. We were born here in 1998. 20 years is what? 2018. We're coming into now our young adulthood. See that? If, Lord willing, we make it out another 20, now we're going to be reaping what we're sowing right now. That's why people look at it and go, man, Rick, you are so academic. You're just pound that stuff. There's a reason. What are we planting? The sound doctrine, aren't we? Bam, boom, boom. Takes a summer for, what happens in the summer to corn? What does it do? It grows. We're planting sound doctrine. It's now beginning to start time to grow. I see it in people in here all the time, where people are growing and moving from being a baby to a little more mature. To some of you went back to being a baby, so we'll talk about, no, I'm just kidding. Okay? That was a joke, all right? But we're moving. See? You move in your spiritual life. Same movement. By the way, in your spiritual life, you may run through this in quicker than 20 years. I hope you do. By the way, I keep saying that word, and it's a word I'm trying to not... Hebrews 4, verse number 12 says that the Word of God is what? Quick. We always say that's alive. It is alive, but it's quick. It's designed to work quickly. You look at Apostle Paul when he laid out how things are to move in the body of Christ. It wasn't designed for it to take 20 years to move from one group to the next. It was designed to move that way within a year to 2 years. He calls the Philippians mature, and that's after 30-something years of ministry, of his own personal ministry, but they've only been living about 20 years. And what are they already? Mature. But your Christian growth runs on the cycle. It really does. So when we talk about the cycles, that's where we're at. We have to understand where then we, the nation, that's what we're talking about. When we go out and deal with people, where is the nation? Now, before we do that, I got to clean something up here real quick. Go with me to Ephesians 5. Ephesians 5. Because as we begin to figure out where we're at, okay? And as we begin to look at the generational pushes and the different things, and we'll spend the rest of the time, I want you to do it with an understanding of something that in Ephesians 5, verse 16 and 17, Paul talks about. Verse 15, Ephesians 5:15, seeing then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. And the doctrinal issues there, we understand that, we talk about it. I want you to take that verse and now put it onto what we're going to talk about in this cycle. We're to be wise about some things. Why? Verse 16. Redeeming the what? The time, because the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. If we're to understand what the will of the Lord is, which is what? Who will have all men be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth, so that he can form the body of Christ with that believer, so then that he can take the body of Christ and as the body take over the governmental structure of the heavenly places, which is Ephesians 9, 10, and 11 there. And the will of the Father is to set His Son above the government of the heavens, whether it's in heaven or in the earth, Israel in the earth, and us there. How did we get up there? Who will have all men be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. We understand that. we're understanding that. We're to do what? Redeem the time. Because we're here one moment, and we can just as easily be not here in the next moment. Okay? And I want you to remember that as we now begin to go and talk about the cycle. Because we're going to begin to move out of Scripture. Scripturally, there's the cycle. That's all here. And we're going to move into some understanding of what's going on in the cycle. You follow me? Okay. Springtime. In the, where to put it? There it is. I'll just use my cheat sheet. In spring, we're going to grow. Okay? In the turnings and talking about sociology, this is called high, a high point. In the summer, we begin to mature. Okay? Our age. In the talkings, it's called an awakening. And I'm going to run out of room, but we'll do the best we can. In the harvest, when the guys go out and the farmer goes out and harvests the corn in, what's sitting in the field when he's done? Good stuff or bad stuff? Bad stuff. We have decay, don't we? We have an unraveling, is what they call it, of things. And in the wintertime, what happens in the winter? Death. Death happens. It all goes away. So in the next one, it's called, and I'll just write it here, crisis. Okay? So this is the one, first turning, second turning, third turning, fourth turning. So if you ever hear anyone ever say out there in the media, we're in the fourth turning or this is what's happening, this is where we're coming from. On our cycle, what do you think is the most critical point on the cycle? Is it the spring, the summer, the fall, or the wintertime? What's the most critical time? As a nation, we're talking about nation. The wintertime. The wintertime is the most critical time. What does the farmer do in the wintertime? He's preparing for what? Spring. That's ground zero right there. You with me? What we do here, we think about here. We go down to the feed shop, and what do? We order in what we're going to plant there. We take our equipment into the equipment barn, and what do? Tear it down, replace what's broken, get her in, get her ready to roll, upload the latest GPS stuff. You know, they got a tractor that drives by itself. Isn't that amazing? You know? Not cool for the farmer. Goofy things like $1 million cost. Well, we subsidize it, so it's only $500,000. Still, that's a lot of money, but it'll put him out of a livelihood eventually. Morris Chestnut, who's a Grace pastor down in Ridge Farm, Illinois, he's a farmer, and his son's a farmer. And when they first got the first GPS-guided system on a tractor, Morris took his old tractor and planted a row, and I just forgot his son's name. Alan. Alan took the new tractor, planted a row. Morris's was straighter. Well, Morris had 60 years of doing it too, you know, and the update wasn't quite downloaded yet. You know, I don't know. Wintertime is when you make those decisions that you're going to execute in the spring. So then it's important to understand what's going on in each of the cycles. You follow? I hope you catch that. Okay? In the spring, it's a high time. This is the spring. It's a high time. Everything's upbeat. Everything's going in the, you know how it is around here. We're going in the fall here, September and October. Everybody's excited. But what happens when we come out of winter and we get that week of spring? Those 3 days of spring. Boy, everything's awesome, isn't it? You know? And it's upbeat. And you're going to be planting so it's a high. That's the point. It's a high. You're going to be planting what you decided in the wintertime. You've been out, you've cleaned the fields, everything's ready to roll. The summer, that's the awakening time. The summer is full of passion. It's that issue of you remember, I think it was a song or culturally, the summer of '69. Do you know what happened in the summer of '69? Woodstock. What was going on at Woodstock? I saw a documentary about Woodstock. You know, I wasn't there. I was born a year later. But what was going on? All that, everybody was in complete harmony with one another. Passion. You know what are you doing when you move from youth to young adult? When you move, what were you doing? You're testing the spring, aren't you? Then you come into the fall. That's the unraveling. You're downcast at that point. Everything's beginning to get, ugh. If you live in the Midwest, you are gray clouds and gray sky is moving in now for months on end. It's all beginning to unravel. Things are beginning to slow down. The winter, that's the crisis over here. The winter, it's death. You're out harvest. It's all done. The old is done away with. It's a violent time. There's violence. People they don't understand why is this dead now? Why isn't this working? They begin to struggle with it. It's an interesting thing when you begin to look at what's going on in society, because that's where we're at today. America is in the wintertime right now, okay? When you begin to think about each one of these, I'm going to look here. I got to mark. Just give me just a second. How about the wars? Think about the wars. It's something easy to look at, okay? In the springtime, you have Queen Anne's War. Anybody know what that was? No. How about the War of 1812? That's a springtime. Okay? I was what, 2? No. Okay? The War of 1812. Okay? That's a springtime war. How about the Korean War? You remember the Korean War? The wars in the springtime tend to be standoffs. No conclusion. We're dealing with North Korea today. Why? Because they didn't do what the Marine General Westmoreland asked them to do when he got onto the peninsula. Give me my Marines and we'll march from here to all the way through it. We'll get it done. They didn't do that. Why? It's the first political war. Yes, sir. Wrong general. Well, he was there, but yeah. MacArthur had said that too, yeah. Westmoreland said that about Vietnam. He said, let me have them and I'll march them all the way through. Okay, wrong war. But the Korean War, the High Era wars, these wars tend to be standoffs. How about the next one? The summertime. Have you heard of a little thing called the English Civil War? How about King George's War? How about the Spanish-American War? Oh, there you go. In our day, it would be Vietnam. The Vietnam War was a summertime war. Summertime wars are controversial in its time and badly remembered afterward. Isn't that interesting? How about the third turning? The fall. French and Indian Wars, you remember those? Mexican War? How about World War I? WW1. How about Operation Desert Storm? Get a little more, okay? These wars are ultimately they fail to alter the underlying social mood. World War I had really, for us, for America, we were in late and it was just kind of there. Now for Britain, it was completely different. For Britain, World War I was a wintertime war because they were in the winter on their national cycle. A different world. Now we're talking about us, okay? Our nation. But Operation Desert Storm, this is number one, George Sr. Did we win that? It was kind of just there, didn't it? It just kind of was like, it didn't have any, we're like, huh? Okay, we're 6 months. But I'll tell you what Operational Desert Storm did for you, is it showed you that he could make it, that the armies, the military could move and move quickly now. Because what was beginning to come on board? Technology. See. The fourth, the wintertime. How about the War of the Roses? You remember that back in the, I do, English. Okay. How about the Armada triumph? Do you remember the Armada, the Spanish Armada? And they're going to go across the canal and get the Queen and get England. And then that storm comes up. What happened to the Spanish Armada? Every one of them was sunk to the bottom of the channel. King Philip's War. How about the Revolutionary War? Remember that one? How about the Civil War? That's a big one. How about WW2? You see, the crisis wars, the winter wars, the outcome is totally confirmed. That war is, the conclusion is there, it's done, it's strong, it's over. There's no talking about winner and loser. The winners are clearly identified, the losers are clearly identified, and it's done. Interesting, isn't it? In the wintertime, that's where we're at. Each one of these, there's a political movement. Do you remember what triggered the Revolutionary War? A little tea party called Boston Tea Party. Okay? Well, it's a tax on the tea. There's a trigger mechanism to each as they begin to move. So when you begin to look at this, in wintertime, there's a sweeping political realignment with the end of a split government, and you become a centralized unit of power. Before we could see it coming, it's here now. You hear them today, you look at Twitter, you look at different things, and what's happening? The Republican Party is going away. The Democrat Party is going around. We need a third party. What are they doing? They're moving it into a centralized. This last week, Congressman introduced a single-payer unit for the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. You know what single-payer means? The government They're centralizing things. They're bringing it all in. You know why? Because what's going on in the winter? What do we see dying? You see the value of life? What's the value of life anymore? It's what? It's going away. It's because now we have chaos and now we have crisis, and one group's got to get ahead of the other, and there's no longer a discourse. So socially, what's beginning to happen? Things are beginning to deteriorate. Economically, there's an economic that changes. It's an interesting thing when we get into the generations, the boomers, the Depression era people are save. The boomers come along and they go save, spend. The Gen Xers are like, what do? We don't know. The millennials are save. It's an interesting thing. So economically, there's a difference. We were moving toward more debt. Now what are we moving toward? Dave Ramsey, the paid off house is the new Beamer sitting in the parking lot, in the driveway. That's his big thing on the radio. See, the status quo. You begin to have a rise in public service. What happened under the former President Obama? What do we have now? Community organizers, community service. Everything is service driven. You're driving everything to a service point. That's a characteristic of the wintertime. Good and evil. They become more sharply identifiable, believe it or not. Because now what's happening? On this cycle, you have different generations, we're going to look at them here in just a minute, that are then viewing things at different things. Why would President Trump stand? Think about what generation, what group is he in? He's an elder. And he would not only call out the one group in Charlottesville, but then he also called out the other group. He got crucified for it. But what was he doing? He's identifying sharply what? Good and evil. So what do? Well, we do 2 Timothy 4:2. We preach the word where? In season and out of season. That's what we do. Economically, we're on a cycle. Right now, the cycle, according to the wise guys, is we're over here. 2008 was our death, and we're moving. It moves quicker. Economically, the baby boomers they have been retiring. Okay? And in economics, it's an interesting thing. In economics, if I can do this, and the boomers are here. Can you guys see that? Their spending curve is like that. They're spending right now in the last 20 years. They're spending. They're moving. They're doing. The Gen Xers, which is me, our spending curve is down there. Do you know why the difference? Numbers. There's more of the boomers than there are the Gen Xers. Spending in the moment, in the system. Now you got the millennials come in. You know where their spending is? Over the top. You know why? There's more numbers of them. There's more of them. It isn't that they're spending more. They're just moving. Technology. For the baby boomers, the typewriter was a big piece of technology. Okay? It was. I got a few of them in my garage. For the Gen Xers, the first gaming system was Atari, and bing, bong, bang. And I don't play video games. Never learned how, never had an interest in them. Okay? I got friends. You know, my buddies, you know what they played? They played Dungeons and Dragons, and you know what that was? On a board game in the basement before Mom and Dad got home on, you know, because we were good Christian kids. And I looked at that stupid game and I go, nope, that ain't for me either. You know, I have a hard time with... Now they play Dungeons and Dragons on the TV and in the systems. And why? Because the millennials, they grew up they came out of the womb with the iPhone in their hand. Almost. Okay? Different things pushing. In the technology, do you remember the Y2K mess in technology? There was a little bubble burst. Socially, the cycle is dying. So now we have the culture wars all over again. In the 60s, it was called civil rights. Today, it's called the cultural wars. Same thing, and it's done what? It's just repeating itself all the way around. So when we talk about the cycle here, it's kind of, it gets to be interesting where we're sitting and what we're at. Okay? Now, before we take another break here real quick, the springtime is 1946 to 1964. We're talking on this current term, this current cycle. We're being current, okay? The summer cycle is 64 to what? 84. Now, we're not talking generations, we're just talking cycle, because we're talking turnings, okay? The fall is 84 to 04. That's, okay? The winter time really starts in 04, and it's going to go out to probably 2025, like that, they say. Okay? It's 20 years. Think about on a 20-year cycle. Okay? Now, when you begin to think about this, and now we're going to put the generations on there, where the boomers fit, where these guys fit. If we're at high point in 46, what ended in 45? World War II, which was a wintertime war, wasn't it? Spring to high. You got the guy kissing the girl in Times Square on life cover. You got everybody coming home. Everybody's happy. But what happened in 64? Do you remember? Kennedy got killed, didn't he? 63, okay? We were already in the Bay of Pigs and Cuba, and all that mess was happening. By the way, was there ever a resolve of that? No, it just kind of happened, and it began to push. It's the trigger points. There's trigger points all through this. 64 to 84. Who showed up in 84 as the President of the United States of America? Ronald Reagan did in 80, right? Well, what happened in 79? Had a little problem with gasoline in the pump, little problem with some Palestinians taking it. So you got all this stuff going on that's trigger mechanisms to now move down into here and to move to here. Do you know what moved us from fall into winter? We just celebrated its 16th anniversary, 9/11, 2001. 9/11. By the way, do you remember when Pearl Harbor happened? Come on. There's the trigger point for moving from out of winter into the springtime. Because what did that do? It put us in the war, and the war, when was the treaty signed in 45? 4 years, the war's done. Clear winter. Who showed up in that war? What did Roosevelt say? They woke the beast? Or maybe that was the Chinese guy said that. The Japanese, we woke the beast. What happened? There's trigger points. That's my point. There's trigger points here. But there are generations that are sitting on these that not everybody is on the same page. Follow that? So it's going to get important here. That we're kind of moving into some more of the historical components. Okay? So you guys need a break? I need to stop the tape so we don't go longer. So just take 2 minutes to stand.